Squadge Phelp presents Video Game Intro Sequences. When booting up a video game, especially for the first time, it needs to do something to grab your attention. The developers want you either playing the game or ready to play the game as soon as possible. Now, sure, they could just throw you straight into the middle of gameplay, but this can be overwhelming and confusing for a lot of people. They might not have any idea what's going on. They might need to play around with the audio, the video, and the accessibility options to make sure playing the game is actually comfortable for them. So the devs need some way to grab your attention before you even play the game, which is where the intro sequence comes in. I love these things so much. They're such a great way to get me excited to play the game, but when done right, you also want to hold off on playing so that you can finish watching the intro sequence. Now, for the sake of clarity here, I'm talking about everything that happens before you reach either gameplay or a main menu. Intro sequences want to convince you to play the game, and as soon as you've pressed the start button, you've agreed to do that. And for this video, I want to go over a number of the different ways studios go about these intro videos, and why I find them to be so effective. Now, one of the biggest places you'll encounter these is a real place. Arcade games are a fantastic showcase of intro sequences, and it makes a lot of sense. Think about it. The arcade has every game there competing with each other for your attention and your money. They need to do something to attract people when they're not being played. In fact, this was so integral that when the cabinet was showing this intro sequence, it is literally called Attract Mode. Let's look at the game Time Crisis as an example. This title screen doesn't really tell you anything about what the game is, and when you're a kid in the arcade, you only have a very limited amount of money to be spending on these things, so why would you risk spending your quarters on this when you could spend it on this?
Sometime, somewhere, someone is plotting a government overthrow. A small republic is in danger. It's time for the one-man army. Richard Miller. She must be dead by now.
Don't come!
Rachel McPherson.
Since you have traveled so very far, be my guest and let me entertain you.
Cherudo Gatto. Just to be sure. Wild Dog. Time Crisis.
Yeah, it's the exact same game, but now I really want to play it. And most of that footage is just taken from the cutscenes that happen between the game's three stages. There's nothing wrong with doing this, of course. In fact, a lot of games in and out of the arcade would do this. But at the same time, a lot of games would also have dedicated, intentionally crafted attract screens and intro sequences, ones that would have unique music, artwork, animations, and no genre, at least in the arcades, does this better than fighting games. So many of them have incredible and downright iconic intro sequences. In my fighting games video, which you should go and watch, I talk about how one of the most important elements of a fighting game is the characters, and so it makes sense that a lot of intro sequences put them front and centre. Some games might have a montage that shows off the cast and how vibrant their designs and their personalities are. Others tend to have short animations focusing on maybe one or two characters before going straight into a gameplay demo. When 3D fighters were still new, a lot of them would focus on just showing gameplay of the characters, but from more cinematic angles that you wouldn't normally see during gameplay. For the most part, these sequences would only be around 30 to 60 seconds long, but as these games started spreading out of the arcades and onto home consoles, their intro sequences slowly began to change, often becoming much longer too. Soul Calibur makes an excellent introduction that's much longer than anything from the arcade, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. Street Fighter Cross Tekken opens with a stunning pre-rendered cinematic that shows off all sorts of fun interactions as the characters from both series clash together, but sometimes they can get a bit too long, and I begin to lose my attention, which is a problem that the Tekken games especially have. That's not to say they're all bad. Tekken 5's is fantastic, but they very rarely get me excited to play Tekken. But just because the intro isn't energetic and exciting doesn't mean it's bad. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time's title screen tells you that you're going on an adventure, whilst also saying that the downtime in between the big exciting moments are something to be appreciated. Twilight Princess did something very similar too, but that lent a bit more into building intrigue and mystery, with Wolf Link and Hyrule Castle being trapped behind some mystical barrier. Final Fantasy X just has the party all sitting around amidst the ruins of a destroyed city, but the music and the very sombre soundscapes add so much to it. You're not necessarily excited to play, but you are eager to. You want to find out more. Your curiosity has been piqued. These quiet moments in games are something that I really like, and it's nice to see them being shown front and centre like this. It really tells me that the developers also share my appreciation of these moments. Intros like these can do a fantastic job at establishing the game's overall tone. Some games even go a bit further with this and use their intros as a prologue to the story. A few of the Fallout games do this, but as iconic as some of them are, I can't help but feel they're a bit too bloated most of the time. People love Ron Perlman's narration explaining the world, and understandably so, but I think they're often the weakest part of their intros. You could remove it from each one and they would all still work. And at least in the case of New Vegas, most if not all of the information we're given during that narration is just a lot more fun to discover naturally through playing the game itself. But it also says a lot that despite this narration adding so much time to the video itself, the intro to New Vegas is still incredible, especially because of how well it executes that ending stinger.
Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
Jak 3, back on the PlayStation 2, also has a prologue that I think goes on for a bit too long, but that one is at least helped by the fact it uses established characters with existing chemistry. Pizza Tower, on the other hand, that game's prologue is a minute long, has no dialogue, and tells you everything you need to know about the game's story. That being said, Pizza Tower also has a far more simplistic plot than either Jak 3 or any of the Fallout games. Honestly, I think prologues are probably the most difficult intro sequence to get right. You need to find that balance between selling people on the game, whilst also not overloading them with detailed information. Doing this whilst also not being too long or boring can be a serious challenge, especially for big RPGs and worlds of detailed lore and backgrounds. But also, the very nature of them means that you very rarely get anything from watching it every time that you boot up the game, especially when they last longer than 5 minutes. Whereas you look at, say, Shadow the Hedgehog's opening. that was incredible. This entire intro sequence is basically just Shadow the Hedgehog killing aliens and the military, whilst the most fitting music conceivable for his character plays in the background. It sets the tone, it shows off the mechanics and the characters, and it's just so fucking cool. Sure, it doesn't tie in directly to anything that happens in-game, but it also does such a fantastic job at representing what the developers were aiming for, what they want you to feel as you're playing through Shadow the Hedgehog. Genuinely, I think this is probably the best intro of any Sonic game, and that's saying a lot, because the variety and the quality of intros in Sonic games is some of the highest out there. One series that I think does a really good job overall are the Pokemon games. These tend to vary a lot between showcasing the Pokemon, the characters, and the world, but they're all really effective, even the more simple ones. And it makes me a little sad that gradually they seem to have given up on making them over time. Most of the Switch era games just have a basic title screen without even any music. It's really boring. That's not to say that games need intro sequences though, they're just nice to have. Even short and simple ones can be effective. Monster Hunter Wilds has your character camping out in a tent before leaving to reveal one of the game's vast locations. It's only about 30 seconds long, if that, but it's very effective at showing you the world you'll be exploring. The Siren on the PlayStation 2 has a really simple sequence, cutting in with corrupted VHS artifacts while strange ringing noises play like you're submerged in water. And then as the title fades in, air raid sirens echoing in the distance, perhaps one of the most terrifying sounds in existence for a lot of people. Going back a little bit earlier, Spyro the Dragon was opening with glimpses into each game's worlds, having Spyro do a little bit of day saving, a bit of mischief, before transitioning seamlessly into the main menus. It's not complicated, it's not exciting, but it tells you a lot about the game before you've even started. Sure, in a lot of cases you could just mash the A button and get straight into playing, but sometimes it's just really fun to have your attention be grabbed and the tone set just a few moments beforehand. Intro sequences just help me get into the headspace to play the video game, and no matter what video game that might be, and I love that. A lot of intro sequences use similar formulas and ideas from each other. You've got ones that just show off the characters in cool ways, same with showing off the world in different ways and a number of environments, ones that are basically music videos, ones that just have hyper-fast editing. But there's one trope that intro sequences sometimes do, which I love more than anything else.
Super Mario Sunshine! Woohoo!
Ridge Racer 2! Wave Race! Crash Bandicoot 4!
Marvel vs. Capcom 2. New Age of Heroes.
I don't know why I love it so much, but having an announcer proudly proclaim the title of whatever video game you're playing just speaks to me. When researching for this video, I asked quite a lot of my friends if they had any examples of intro sequences that stuck out to them, and it was really nice to see them all give such wildly different examples from one another. And a lot of the games that they told me about were games that I never really knew a lot about, if I even knew about them at all. Sure, there were some obvious choices too. Super Smash Bros. Melee, Mario Power Tennis, Left 4 Dead, plenty more. But there were also games that I had never played or even heard of too. Dokapon Kingdom is a medieval fantasy party game, and all I know about it is this intro video. But now I kind of want to play Dokapon Kingdom. And the same applies to Oni, a PlayStation 2 game made by Bungie and published by Rockstar. Yes, that Bungie, and that Rockstar. By the time I'd started writing this script, I'd watched over 150 different intros, and it's amazing to see just how varied these can be. Each one is trying to do something more than just tell you what game you're playing. It's trying to elicit some sort of response from you that makes you want to keep going. So it makes me just a little bit sad inside when I boot up a game for the first time and it just goes straight to the main menu. And maybe this says more about the games I'm playing, but I just don't see them as much in a lot of modern games. They still exist in plenty of titles, but a lot of games do forego intro videos to get you straight into the game. It makes sense, and it's not even necessarily a bad thing. Games nowadays take a lot of time, money, and resources to make. Why dedicate so much of that to something that ultimately doesn't really matter? Well, because they do matter. If they didn't matter, then we wouldn't have so many great ones. They wouldn't live rent-free in so many people's minds decades after they last played the game associated with it. I hope that we keep seeing them in new releases, because whilst the game doesn't feel lesser for not having an intro sequence, they always feel special to watch. If you've made it this far into the video, then I'm gonna take an educated guess and say that you probably also have a favourite game intro. But the odds are I probably didn't mention it. Hell, I didn't even mention a lot of my own personal favourites because I just couldn't fit them into the video anywhere. So feel free to head on down to the comments and let me know what your favourite video game intro sequence is and why. Like, I genuinely really want to know. I had so much fun watching the 150 plus different intro sequences as research for this video. It was so good to just discover new games like this that I never even heard of before. And I can't wait to discover even more like this. And maybe even play some of the games that the developers were passionate enough about to make these intro sequences for.